I just spent $23,375 to remodel my LA studio apartment that is 279 square feet, which is very expensive. And we're gonna talk about why on today's episode. If you stick around until the end, I will tell you how much this property is gonna make, and we can decide together if this remodel was a good investment or not. And by the way, in case you don't know who I am, this is a great intro because this is how it goes on my channel.
I hate this place.
I'm Rob Abasolo. I've got a 40-unit real estate portfolio, and I've taught hundreds of thousands of people, maybe millions of people at this point, how to start their Airbnb portfolios on YouTube. For free, by the way, always for free. So when I ask you to like, you're like, oh yeah, this is free. Thank you for doing this, Rob. Click, 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 click. Anyway, let's talk about this LA studio and why it costs so much to renovate. First and foremost, with this property, it is really small. It's 279 square feet. And so when you think about going through an entire remodel, I mean, this wasn't a gut remodel by any means, but it was also not a cosmetic remodel. We had to do a lot. We added a new shower, we added new cabinetry, we did a lot of plumbing. And when you have a really small blueprint of a layout, the cost per square footage will skyrocket the smaller places. I think that makes sense. So if you think about tiny house construction, for example, I built a tiny house in the backyard of the same property. It's an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit, and it was 303 square feet. That ADU cost me $72,000 to build. And it was really bootstrapped, and I did a lot of the work myself. I then went on to build that same property in Joshua Tree, California with a super legit contractor, and that build cost me $165,000. Now, if we actually look at the square footage of that, $165,000 divided by 303 square feet is $544 per square foot, which is crazy because building a house typically will cost anywhere from $150 to $300 a square foot, depending where in the country you are. But as I said, the smaller the house is, the more it's gonna cost per square foot because there are just certain things you're gonna have to pay for no matter what the size of the property is. An electrical panel, a driveway, a foundation, plumbing. There are so many aspects of a house that will cost the same regardless of how big the house is. It's not like because I'm building tiny, I'm building a tinier driveway or using a tiny electrical panel. It just doesn't work that way.
What is this?
A center for ants!
And so a similar logic can sort of be applied to this studio apartment, which is 279 square feet. Now, taking my budget of $23,000 in the square footage of this studio apartment of 279 square feet, the average cost per square foot to remodel this property is $83. And that is actually really high, regardless of how small my space is. The last reason this remodel ended up costing so much was because I decided to add a washer and dryer to this little unit. And this is something that I decided to do because I was looking at the comparable properties in the area, and none of the comps had a washer and dryer, so I knew that I could have a competitive edge against my competition. But because of this washer and dryer, it added $5,000 to the overall remodeling budget, which was significant. Had I not added the washer and dryer, this remodel would have come out to closer to $18,000 or $65 a square foot. So as you can see, a $5,000 swing like this can have a dramatic impact on the price per square foot for a very tiny space like this. So here's a breakdown of the cost in case you're wondering. The materials cost me $7,173. The labor cost me $12,400. And then I paid an additional $3,800 to have the washer and dryer installed, which was a lot of work. It was plumbing that had to be routed from a shower. We had to break the concrete in the foundation to put all the drainage and everything in there, and then add electrical to power the washer and dryer. So that's the overall budget and how I got to the $23,373. Now that's what it cost, but let's talk about why I spent so much. Let me give you a little history on this property. When I bought this house, it was $624,000. I was buying it at a time in my life where I really couldn't afford this house, and the layout of this house was very interesting. There's a 1,200 square foot main home on the second level, and underneath was this 279 square foot studio space. And at that time, I had heard that this Airbnb thing was happening, and I started looking around and comping on Airbnb, and I had realized that I could rent this place for $2,000 to $3,000 a month, which would subsidize 50 to 75% of the $4,400 mortgage that I was coming into, which made it totally feasible for me to buy this property. And by the way, I know a lot of you are probably in a similar position, and maybe you're wanting to learn how to get into the Airbnb game. So if that's you, stick with me until the end of the video because I've got something for you. Anyways, for many months, I was making $2,000 to $3,000 on this property, and it was really going pretty dang well for me, kids. But it's true, it was going super well. And then one day I had a midterm rental tenant that was staying there and paying me, I think, $2,500 a month. And they said, hey, would it be cool if we lived here full time? And honestly, I was like fine with the stability of it. And I was like, you know what? Why not? I could pretty much make the same amount of money, rent it to someone for a year, and not have to deal with the hustle and bustle of a short-term rental. Well, they ended up living there for 2 to 3 years, and then multiple people ended up living down there, and it was kind of a small space, and then it really just kind of got gross over time, just like a typical rental. And so they moved out, and I walked in and assessed the place, and I was just like, ugh. Like, even if I clean this place, I don't want to rent it to another human. That's how I felt. Because basically, I am not a slumlord. I think someone would have figured out how to stick someone in there for $1,200 or $1,500 a month. I didn't really feel doing that. I was actually making $1,800 a month on this little studio as a midterm rental, and I just shut it off. I didn't need the money anymore. I had scaled up my Airbnb portfolio. I was making money with a bunch of different income streams, and the $1,800 was just not really significant for me anymore, to be honest. Must be nice, right? And that's the moment where I lose y'all, and y'all are like, oh, great, unrelatable, unsubscribe. And I recognize that, but for me at that time, I just didn't want to deal with being a landlord in that specific unit because it was gross, and I'm not sorry about it. But fast forward to 2024 and really the last half of 2023, and I have been on a mission to polish my portfolio and really squeeze every dollar that I can out of the current portfolio that I have. Meaning I've been reinvesting heavily into my properties instead of buying more properties. Because as an educator in this space and as someone who teaches Airbnb for a living, the message of, hey, go buy, scale, get more doors, it just doesn't sit right with me. And I think that's what a lot of people in this space say. When I've just made the decision that it's way more profitable in the end to invest back into my properties and figure out how I can make more money with the properties that I have. So knowing that that's my mission, I kind of felt silly that I had this vacant, literally dusty unit in my house in LA, not collecting rent, and it was just such an obvious place for me to focus on for making more money. So that's how I came to the decision of remodeling the studio. And then I got quotes from the people that built my tiny house in Los Angeles, and admittedly, it was pretty high. It was pretty premium. It was more than I wanted to spend and more than I thought I should spend. But at the end of the day, I trusted them. I trusted them because they've done really awesome work for me before in the past. I freaking saw them build a tiny house. And so I bit the bullet because I knew that this could be the team to get it done for me remotely while I lived in Texas, and I didn't have to babysit them. And that to me, by the way, is 100% the premium. Total, I'm gonna end up spending about $16,000 in labor. Had I gone with other contractors or other people, I probably could have shaved that down to like 12,000, maybe 11,000. I think that's pushing it, but 12,000. So I could have saved money for sure. But hey, I wanted the peace of mind. And truthfully, now that I'm at the end of this, I don't regret it at all. And I think you'll agree too once you hear the ROI for this project. So what is the ROI? Well, like I said, back in the day, I was making $2,000 to $3,000 a month on Airbnb with this particular unit. And about a year or two ago, my neighbor actually listed their unit. I always check up on them, see how they're doing. They're killing it. They're completely booked. And several people around me also seem to be pretty booked. And they all have very similarly sized units. And then I did a little bit more research, hopped into AirDNA, and actually saw 2 awesome comps in my neighborhood that are doing $3,000 to $4,000 a month for units that are honestly just not that nice. Now, one of these units have a patio, and that's a pretty big competitive advantage in the comp set that I took a look at. But some of the comps that I'm talking about have older homes, non-professional photography, and so I really feel confident that I should be able to come in and do $3,000 to $4,000 a month using a variety of rental strategies. So with those numbers in mind, my cash-on-cash return on the low end is gonna be a 90 to 100%, which is just ridiculous. But on the high end, and even more ridiculous, I'm looking at 130 to 160% cash-on-cash return, which for an Airbnb, midterm rental, long-term rental, short-term rental, it doesn't matter, is crazy. And it's honestly not the norm, and it wouldn't be the case for most projects like this. But because I'm doing this remodel, it's gonna turn on this vacant cash flow machine that's been laying dormant for the past couple of years. Again, not normal. We're typically going for like a 10 to 20% cash-on-cash return in this industry. These days, closer to 10 to 15%, but it just goes to show you that the numbers for this particular project make a lot of sense. And like I said earlier at the beginning of this video, I know some of you really want to jump into the Airbnb game and learn the ins and outs. Hang with me, we're gonna get there, I promise. Just give me a second, we'll talk about how you can learn Airbnb for free. Okay? Now that we've talked about the ROI of this particular project, it leads me to why this is the ultimate short-term rental strategy. Midterm rentals too, because that's what this one will mostly be. Here's why this strategy of reinvesting back into your properties really works. This property that we're talking about is already breaking even or profitable. Because remember, like I said, I have a main unit upstairs and I have a tiny house ADU in the backyard that already make this property perform. Meaning that every single dollar that I add to the top line pretty much also goes to the bottom line. Because because for this particular unit, my only real expense is gonna be my cleaning fees. And if I mostly lean into the midterm rental model, then my cleaning fees are gonna be fairly minimal. We're talking maybe 100, 150 bucks a month. Now, of course, before the sharks start saying, what about utilities? Yes, I do have utilities. They're shared across the entire property. The increase in cost of utilities for a unit, 279 square feet, will be fairly marginal, like very, very, very small. And I've got one tiny little bathroom and a pretty efficient washer and dryer. So overall, not a lot of costs. So what I want to leave you with, and what I'm going to continue to say on the Raw Built channel, is this. I could have gone and invested money in a new property, and I could have gone and found a realtor and gotten pre-approved and made an offer and closed on it and furnished it and built my Airbnb Avengers team comprised of my cleaner, handyman, contractor, pest control, landscaper, all that stuff. I could have done all that and worked a ton to do that and maybe make a 15% cash on cash return on a new property. Maybe. But why would I do that when I had a gold mine at my disposal? Why would I do that when I could have just spent a little bit of time coordinating with the contractor to remodel the space that I already had? It's so much easier. This remodel is significantly easier than me going out and buying a new property, which is why you saw me take this dilapidated tennis court in Scottsdale and turn it into this amazing pickleball court, which has increased revenue from like $11,000 to $40,000 in my peak months, or why I took this really boring house in College Station and transformed it into this epic game day house, or why I built this treehouse deck in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, or this mini golf course in Crystal Beach, Texas. All of these projects, concepting and ideating and building these projects out, have been so much easier than buying another property. And that's the Airbnb game in 2024. Now remember earlier when I said, hey, do you wanna learn how to Airbnb? I've got something for you. Well, I do. I've actually put together this crash course in short-term rentals that will literally teach you everything you need to know about starting an Airbnb business. All you have to do is click right here, watch it, take notes. It's awesome. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Happy hosting.